These are my 3 audience members.
According to climatechange.nasa.gov, just in the last 650,000 years, there has been 7 cycles of glacial advancement and retreatment, with the abrupt end of the last ice age about 7,000 years ago, marking the beginning of modern climate era. Around 1950, the levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide surpassed the average amount and have peaked at a level of 400 carbon dioxide part per million. Climate change is having serious impacts on the world's water system through more flooding and drought. Average air temperatures in the region have increased by about 5 degrees Celsius over the last 100 years. This information presented is to persuade you to believe in the evidence of climate change, the cause of climate change, and the effects of climate change. The information I have found is all based on credible websites. The information presented is based on scientific research conducted by trained professionals and scientists. In the first point, I will present you with evidence supporting climate change. In the second point, I will share information on the causes of climate change, and in the third and final point, I will inform the audience on the effects of climate change. According to NASA, the planet's average surface temperature has risen about 1.62 degrees Fahrenheit and 0.9 degrees Celsius. In the past 35 years, with the 5 warmest years on record taking place since 2010, 2016 was the warmest year on record. But 8 out of the 12 months that make up the year, from January through December, excluding June, were the warmest on record for those respective months. The current warming trend is of a particular significance because most of it is extremely likely greater than 95% probability to be the result of human activity since the mid-20th century, and proceeding at a rate that is unprecedented over the decades to millennia, according to NASA. There is a lot of evidence that tells us average temperatures of the world's atmosphere and oceans have increased over the past 150 years. According to the Ministry for the Environment, the evidence provided is direct temperature measurements on land changes in the date when lakes and rivers freeze and their ice melts, a reduction in the extent of snow cover in the northern hemisphere, extended growing seasons of plants, changes of heat stored in the ocean, changes in rainfall patterns resulting in more floods and droughts, and intense rain. The evidence shows a sign of warming of our Earth. There is a dominant factor that increases our risk of climate change. Knowing these factors are beneficial for helping decrease the risk of climate change and can overall help our planet. According to the Ministry for the Environment, over the past 150 years, there has been a marked and growing increase in greenhouse gases producing activities such as industry, agriculture, and transportation. These human-induced activities are increasing the levels of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere and causing the Earth to heat up at an unprecedented rate. The Ministry of the Environment states human activities have caused carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere to increase to the highest levels in at least 800,000 years. Direct measurement of atmospheric concentration of greenhouse gases emissions have grown in the past decades, and these analyses prove that today's greenhouse gases concentrations have caused a peak in those 800,000 years. Based off of NASA, on Earth, human activities are changing. The natural greenhouse gas over the last century, the burning of fossil fuels like coal and oil has increased the concentration of atmospheric carbon dioxide, also known as CO2. The clearing of land for agriculture contributing factors to the greenhouse gas concentration fluctuation. The Earth is rapidly changing around us. It is important to monitor how it changes and how to keep it from dying. We are a main reason for the world's changes, and it is our job and our responsibility to protect the Earth from for future generations. These causes of climate change will lead to damaging effects on our planet. According to WWF, increased water temperatures and higher carbon dioxide concentrations more than normal, which make oceans more acidic. They are already having an impact on oceans. Coral reefs are particularly at risk. Sensitive coral and algae that lives on it are starving of oxygen, causing dramatic bleaching and possibly the eventual death of the coral. If global warming remains at its upward path, by just 2050, just 5% of Australia's Great Barrier Reef, the world's largest coral reef, will remain. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says about 1.5 degrees Celsius average rise may put 20 to 30% of species at risk of extinction. If the planet warms by more than 3 degrees Celsius, most ecosystems will struggle. Information is provided by WWF. The snow leopard is one of the many animals affected by climate change. The change in climate in the Himalayas is 3 times affected, causing the snow leopard to be isolated, affecting them and their prey, found on WWF. Ministry for the Environment predicted that without additional efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emission, the Earth's surface temperature will increase by 3.7 degrees Celsius and 4.8 degrees Celsius by 2100. Relative to the average temperature from 1850 to the 1900s, however, if we reduce greenhouse gas emission by 40 to 70% by 2050, the average warming is likely to stay below 2 degrees Celsius. In my speech, I have informed you first on the evidence of climate change. In the second point, I informed you on the cause of climate change, and in the last and third point, I spoke on the effects of climate change on our Earth. To review, according to climate.nasa.gov, just in the last 650,000 years have been 7 cycles of glacial advancements and retreatments, with the abrupt end of the last cycle about 7,000 years ago, marking the beginning of the modern climate era. Around 1950, the levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide surpassed the average amount and has peaked at a current level of 400 carbon dioxide part per million. In conclusion, considering the information I presented, climate change is real. It is a real issue that is affecting our planet. This information presented is research from credible sources such as NASA and WWF. This information is important to understand. We are the present and the future of this planet and do not want to lose it. To conclude, climate change is not something we can easily be rid of, and that is why I hope to persuade you to pay closer attention to climate change and the warming of our Earth. Thank you.